guys, it's a beautiful day to be alive. I was out here reminiscing with my old friend over here about when I used to go and take people out on tour. Now, I'll be honest, after 6-7 years of touring, I got a little bit tired of it. But after a year and a half of lockdown on Easter Island, not being able to leave the island and having no tourists here, right now, I'd love to get out and show you around. But it occurred to me that every single day that I would go out on tour, people would ask me the same questions. So today I wanted to tell you 10 of the top questions that people asked me as a guide on Easter Island. Now, these might surprise you because they're not really the typical questions you would expect. So hang around to the end. I think you might be surprised at some of these questions. What's that?
Tell them to like the content.
But they're probably not even subscribed.
Or tell them to like and subscribe.
Okay. You heard him. Like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell so you get notification. Let's get into it. One of the unique things about Easter Island Rapa Nui is that it's covered in wild horses. The reason there are so many of these horses is because Easter Island made the transition from a horse-based society to a car-driven society only over the last 30 years or so. So even 30 years ago, most transport was done on horses. People plowed their land with horses. People ate horses. And so they were really the lifeblood of the island. With the influx of tourism over the last 30 years, things have changed. Now most people plow their land with tractors, get around in cars and motorbike. They generally eat imported steak. The horse's usefulness has actually waned a lot, but the idea that they're integral to the island's life hasn't. Only 10% of the horses probably used for anything, and although the rest are branded and theoretically owned by someone, they're really just left to roam freely along the island. Is there a prison on the island? Yes, there is. There is about 15 people in the prison at the moment, and they're able to use the time in the prison to make artwork and sell it to the tourists. So within visiting hours, you can pass by the prison, visit it, check it out. Do you know everyone on the island? No, I don't know everyone on the island. There's about 8,000 people. I know enough that if I go out on any given day, I'm saying hi to people every 15 minutes or so and having small conversations. About half the population is Rapa Nui, and I'm married into a Rapa Nui family. My wife is Rapa Nui. So the Rapa Nui people here know who I am. They know where I fit in the social strata of Easter Island. But about half the population is Chilean from the mainland, and a lot of them are more transitory, so they come for a small period of time and then they go back to the mainland of Chile. And so I know less of them, maybe a third of the Rapa Nui or so. I know a lot of people on the island, but not all people. Do you get bored saying the same thing every day? Well, yes, I do actually. The cool thing is we get people at their best. We get people visiting the island, they're all excited, they're open, they're ready to chat, they're ready to engage, and you get to be the person presenting this amazing experience to the people. A way that I offset repeating myself all the time, or at least give myself a rest, is I ask a lot of questions, where they're from, what they do in their home country, and by the end, we're generally really good friends. The drinking water from Easter Island is from underneath the ground. Over thousands and thousands of years, the rain has fallen and the topsoil is very porous, and so the water just goes straight through, and then it sits on this rock and gets cleansed by making its way through the hard rock, and it sits underneath the ground where it gets pumped up to some holding tanks above the town, and then it's released into the town. The only place that you can get running water is within the confines of Hangaroa, the only town on the island. And more people are going out to the countryside these days where they have to generate their own water, or at least get it dropped off by the local fire station. It's the fire station in Easter Island that will come and bring you your water. Well, it's the same with electricity. We can only get it within the confines of the town. Once you go outside of the town of Hangaroa, you're really on your own. You must generate your own electricity, which tends to be with solar panels or small generators. Within town itself, we have 2 giant generators which power the whole island. They run on diesel, much to the pain of the climate change activists. Often people ask, is the water and electricity expensive? We pay about $120 a month. I'm not sure if that's expensive or not. It doesn't seem that expensive, but let me know in the comments below if it's expensive. Tourism is the only industry on the island. It's the only thing that generates any money. And so when we lost tourism a year and a half ago, when COVID hit, about 50% of the population lost their jobs, and the other 50% are generally employed either by the government or fishing or some smaller restaurants perhaps that don't need tourism. But the only thing that actually generates money on the island is tourism. So most people find their favourite place tend to be Ranariraku, where all the statues were carved, or the 15 statues, the giant statues at the sunrise, or the beautiful beach of Anakena, or even the crater of Ranokau. And all those places are absolutely amazing, but they're not my favourite. And the reason they're not is because I tend to have to be working when I'm at those places. So for me, one of my favourite places to go, one of the most isolated places on the island, way over on the north coast, in a place called Hangaoteo. I love the lay of the land there. There's a small little shack with some palm trees around it. You never see anyone when you go over there, and it's got wonderful shore fishing. And so when I want to get away from it all, that's where I would go to hang out. I love to do spearfishing, and spearfishing allows me to get in and explore caves and underwater landscapes or seascapes. Also just the hunt of the fish and then eating them afterwards is wonderful as well. So, well, there's a number of things. Of course, my family, and generally the follow-up question is, apart from your family, there is something about the land itself that when I'm there, it's indescribable. This sense when you touch the land there that you're home. New Zealand has got big open areas, beaches, mountains, rivers, new places to explore, and miss that sense of adventure as you step out the door in New Zealand. Food, just the huge variety of food that you can buy at a supermarket, but also the cheap ethnic foods, Indian food and Thai food, and also just being understood by the people and being able to say a joke without having to explain it afterwards. So are there drugs on the island? Well, yes, there are. Like all places in the world, there's marijuana, and it's smoked quite openly and by a lot of people on the island. Cocaine that's been coming in the last few years, and I've seen 2 people lose their lives to overdoses. A few years ago, they actually had this system where someone was coming out on a big boat, dropping cocaine fixed to a floating buoy with a GPS, and then someone would go out on their small boat way out into the ocean fishing, and they would bring it back. And Rapa Nui people converted en masse to Catholicism in the 1860s. Their former religion was kind of ancestor worship, polytheism. That's where these big statues were made to honor their ancestors. Then they moved on to a kind of competitive competition where they had a race, climbing down cliffs, swimming out to these islets off the coast, trying to find the first egg of a certain bird, and whoever got that egg, his chief would be the chief of the island for that year. But through the 1860s, slave raids, disease struck really hard in the island, and so many people were dying and were sick around this time. Catholics came in, and they were extremely kind. They had contact with the outside world. They tried to help the islanders. The Rapa Nui, always the pragmatists, saw that the old religion wasn't working, and they converted en masse to Catholicism, but they brought with them a lot of their old beliefs. And so even now, as they're giving thanks for the food, they will often invite the ancestors to come and eat with them. If you look at the church, it's absolutely covered in motifs from the Birdman competition, and the carvings in the church are very reminiscent of the Birdman competition in even the ancient ancestor religion. And although the main religion is Catholicism, it's very syncretistic. It depends who you talk to. There are Chileanized Rapa Nui people, and there are much more traditional Rapa Nui people. Those that are doing well under the system that's in place would probably say they like Chile, and those that are doing less well would probably prefer things to change. On the whole, I would say that the Rapa Nui have a respect towards all people. Many of them don't like the Chilean government, which is not surprising. I mean, most people in whatever country don't like their government, and I guess more so when you are a native people wanting to run your own affairs. How do people treat me as a foreigner on Easter Island? Well, they treat me pretty good, I think. I'm married to a very respected woman on the island. I employ people from the island. I make an effort to speak the local language. In saying that, I had to fight to gain my place. It wasn't easy, and it took probably a year and a half, but once the people saw that I was married into the island, that I was here to stay, that I was respectable and respectful, people tend to respect you back. So there we go, some of the interesting questions that I get asked as a guide on Easter Island. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it somewhat insightful. Make sure you press the like button if you enjoyed the content, and we will see you very, very soon.